welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever looked at a 5-year-old, running around, talking a mile a minute, telling ridiculous jokes, and just wondered how on earth did they get there from being a completely helpless newborn just a few short years ago? I mean, it's wild. The first 5 years of human life, it's literally a massive, rapid journey of growth that is absolutely unparalleled in any other stage of life. Today, we're going to demystify this incredible transformation. We'll be looking at the hard clinical milestones from places like the CDC and Brown University Health and, combining them with the foundational psychology of how a child's mind actually constructs reality.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for decoding child development. We're breaking this incredible journey into 4 bite-sized thematic chapters, plus a final guide on spotting developmental delays.
Section 1. The 4 domains, shaping the first 5 years. Section 2. Moving, gross and fine motor skills.
So before a child can ponder the universe, they kind of have to figure out their own limbs, right? When pediatric physical and occupational therapists evaluate movement, they generally split it into 2 main categories. First up, we've got gross motor skills. This involves the large muscles of the body. Think of the big, sweeping actions, rolling over on the living room floor, crawling on their belly, and eventually taking those wobbly first steps. Fine motor skills, on the other hand, utilize the much smaller muscles, specifically the ones in the hands and wrists. This is all about eye-hand coordination. It's learning to grasp a tiny toy or figuring out how to hold a crayon without dropping it. And as the child grows, these 2 systems are constantly working in tandem, basically supporting one another the whole way.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we mean. Looking at the clinical data from the CDC and Brown University Health, we can see these observable milestones in action. At just 2 months old, a major gross motor win is literally just lifting their head during tummy time to push up onto their forearms. It sounds small, but it's a huge deal. Fast forward to 12 months, and that same child is likely walking while holding onto the furniture. They're also using what's called a pincer grasp. That's using their forefinger and thumb to pick up small bits of food, like a little cereal puff. By age 5, no way, it's a whole different ballgame. They're hopping on one foot, balancing, and using those fine motor skills to button their own clothes. It is a staggering evolution of physical control in just 60 months.
Now, if you're a caregiver, looking at all these timelines can sometimes induce a bit of panic, but it is absolutely crucial to view these milestones through the lens of the World Health Organization. They call them windows of achievement. These are general landmarks, guys, not strict pass or fail tests. There is an incredibly wide spectrum of normal variation here. Every single healthy child develops at their own unique pace. So achieving a milestone a month or 2 later than average, that is often perfectly 100% normal.
So we've seen how a child learns to sit, crawl, and grasp, but here is the really fascinating part. These physical actions aren't just exercise. Actually, they're the actual building blocks of intelligence. So what does this all mean? How exactly do we get from grasping a plastic rattle to complex problem solving?
Section 3. Thinking. Cognitive development through Piaget and Vygotsky.
Let's start with the famous Jean Piaget. He argued that from birth right up until they learn language, infants are in what he called the sensory motor stage. In this phase, children aren't learning by reading a book or listening to a lecture. They construct knowledge entirely through physical interactions with objects. They grasp things, they suck on them, they bang pots and pans together. Piaget noted that between 4 to 8 months, infants realize that their repeated actions actually bring pleasurable results. It's like flipping a light switch on and off repeatedly. They learn, hey, I can actually impact the world around me. It's literally the very dawn of human logic.
Now let's zoom out a bit and look at Lev Vygotsky's contrasting, yet honestly highly complementary theory. While Piaget focused heavily on the child exploring all alone, Vygotsky argued cognition is deeply social. He introduced this idea of the zone of proximal development, or the ZPD. Think of this as the ultimate sweet spot of learning. It represents the tasks a child cannot do alone, but can successfully master with just a little bit of guidance from a more knowledgeable person, like a parent, a teacher, or even an older sibling. It absolutely proves that social support actively stretches a child's cognitive limits.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Vygotsky viewed something as incredibly simple as playtime. He highlighted make-believe or imaginative play as a crucial cognitive exercise. When a child pretends to be a doctor, a chef, or, a superhero flying around the living room, they are naturally stepping into roles, rules, and behaviors that are way beyond their current real-world abilities. This imaginative context naturally stretches their cognitive skills and fosters self-regulation without them even realizing they're learning. It's a real game changer.
So, to summarize how a child's mind grows, Piaget kind of gives us the picture of the child as a solo scientist, right? Physically exploring the world to build logic from the ground up. Vygotsky, on the other hand, gives us the child as a social learner, relying heavily on culture, language, and guided participation to reach higher levels of understanding. Together, these two theories paint a remarkably complete, brilliant picture of the developing mind.
Section 4. Speaking. Language and communication landmarks.
As those cognitive abilities grow, so does the intense desire to communicate, and the timeline of language acquisition is truly astounding. At 4 months, a baby is really just figuring out their vocal cords, lots of cooing and babbling with ooh-ooh and ah-ah sounds. By 12 months, they've actually attached meaning to sound. They're calling a parent mama or dada, and crucially, they understand the word no, even if, let's be real, they completely choose to ignore it. By 24 months, they're linking concepts, saying 2 words together like more milk. And by age 3, their cognitive curiosity totally takes over their language, leading to those endless questions we all know: who, what, where, and the infamous why.
So how can we help this process along? Well, the CDC offers some incredibly actionable advice for caregivers to actively support this linguistic development. First off, narrate your day. Talk about what you're doing as you cook dinner or fold the laundry. Listen and respond to their babbles as if they're having a real, deep conversation with you. Read and tell stories constantly, because kids absolutely love unusual words. And finally, and this is a big one, set strict limits for screen time. The CDC clearly notes that children learn best by talking and interacting with real human faces, not screens.
Section 5. Feeling. Attachment and social growth.
You really cannot talk about emotional development without talking about John Bowlby's foundational attachment theory. Bowlby basically posited that infants are biologically wired to need a close relationship with at least one responsive primary caregiver. And this isn't just about getting fed. It is absolutely essential for their survival and their healthy emotional functioning later in life. These secure attachments form when caregivers are sensitive, responsive, and consistently available. And there's a particularly critical window for this occurring right between the ages of 6 months and 2 years.
So, the crucial point here is this concept of the secure base. When an attachment is secure, the caregiver acts as a foundation. The child feels safe enough to crawl away and explore the big wide world, knowing they can always return to that base for comfort if they get scared. This is why phenomena like separation anxiety are actually, believe it or not, entirely normal and adaptive responses. It shows the child has successfully formed that healthy, secure attachment base and clearly recognizes exactly who keeps them safe.
Section 6. Recognizing developmental delays. Now, sometimes development just doesn't follow the typical timeline, and it's incredibly important to know what to watch for. The NEO Clinic outlines several red flags, particularly for preschool-age children between 3 and 5. These include things like not producing sentences that unfamiliar adults can understand by age 4, having significant difficulty following multi-step instructions, an inability to manage basic self-care tasks by 4 or 5, or persistent fine motor difficulties, like, say, struggling to hold a pencil or use scissors when their peers are easily doing so. If you notice these as a parent, you should definitely speak with a pediatrician early on, because domain-specific delays often have very straightforward and highly effective intervention pathways.
And the reason early intervention matters so much brings us right to our conclusion. As the NEO Clinic states, the brain's capacity for neuroplasticity is highest in the first 5 years of life and declines with age. To put that awe-inspiring reality into perspective for a second, there are literally millions of new neural connections forming every single second during this stage of life. Millions! The neural architecture is just more plastic, more adaptable right now than it will ever be again. The first 5 years aren't just a waiting period for real life to begin. They are the most critical window of structural, emotional, and cognitive engineering a human being will ever go through. So, knowing how rapidly these changes occur, what kind of foundation are we helping the next generation build? Think about that and keep exploring.